Hi, welcome back to Truth Fairy Tidbits, TFT, where I spoon feed you bite-sized bits of information that you normally wouldn't look at otherwise in an attempt to try to deprogram the statist mind. So, if you are new and you haven't seen any of my videos before, just go back and start at the beginning. Otherwise, you're going to be completely lost as to what we're talking about. Reading from the book, No Treason by Lysander Spooner. The Constitution of No Authority. I'm going to make it real quick today. We're finishing up talking about how the Constitution does not obligate anybody to be bound to it. Not even the people that originally signed it. But if anybody was, it would have been them because they actually voluntarily agreed to support it and whatever. Constitution and government does not run on voluntary consent. We've made that very clear. So his last point was that if anybody has any further generations from when the Constitution originated, if they are supporting it or bound to it, they did it to themselves, and they claim that that's through taxation and voting. So we covered the voting thing. Voting does not mean that you actually support the government or the Constitution, because it's just a tool that's used to try to make your situation better while robbing the other side a little bit more and forcing them to try to do the things that you think they should be doing and using government to do that. And then they try to do the same thing to you. So by doing that doesn't mean you actually support the Constitution. So the taxes, basically the same thing. Paying taxes is, it's not voluntary, all right? We're coerced, we're extorted, we are robbed. So what he's basically going to say here is that the act of being robbed by government does not mean that you consent to government, okay? So we'll go through this really quick, because it's pretty simple to understand at this point. If you've been following along, paying attention, minus yesterday's little rant that I had to get out there. Sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings, but not really. Anyways, here we go. So the payment of taxes, being compulsory, of course, furnishes no evidence that anyone voluntarily supports the Constitution. The theory of our Constitution is that all taxes are paid voluntarily, that our government is some kind of a mutual insurance company voluntarily entered into by the people with each other. The fact is that the government, like a highwayman, a robber, says to a man, your money or your life, and many, if not most taxes, are paid under the compulsion of that threat. Under such compulsion, it is under such compulsion that taxes are paid. How much proof that payment of taxes affords that the people consent to support the government, it needs no further argument to show. So basically, you can't, paying taxes is no evidence whatsoever that you support the government, because like a gunman robbing you in the street at gunpoint, just because you give that man your money doesn't mean that you consented to being robbed, or that you believe that he owes you any kind of protection. So that's the next part, claiming that, you know, we pay taxes and then the government provides things like protection for you, which it absolutely does not. The difference between the government and a thug in the street robbing you is the thug actually has a little bit more integrity, because they openly tell you what they're doing. They take your money and then they go away. Government lies to you and pretends that they're offering you some kind of a service, pretends that they're not actually robbing you, pretends that you're volunteering to pay them for protection or whatever else bullshit they claim they do for you. They do nothing. Okay. All political power, as it is called, rests practically upon the matter of money. Any number of scoundrels having money enough to start with can establish themselves as a government, because with money they can hire soldiers, and with soldiers extort more money and also compel general obedience to their will, which is why you pay taxes. You are extorted, because if you don't pay them, eventually you're going to end up in jail. Voluntary. So these villains who call themselves government well understand that the power rests primarily on money. And when their authority is denied, the first use they always make of money is to hire soldiers to kill or subdue all who refuse them more money. For this reason, whoever desires liberty should understand these vital facts. Number 1, every man who puts money into the hands of a government puts into its hands a sword which will be used against him to extort more money from him and also keep him in subjection to its arbitrary will. Number 2, those who will take his money without his consent in the first place will use it for his further robbery and enslavement if he presumes to resist their demands in the future. If a man wants protection, supposedly, that's what the government does for us, he is competent to make his own bargains for it, and nobody has any occasion to rob him in order to protect him against his will. These factors are so vital and so self-evident that cannot be reasonably supposed that anyone will voluntarily pay money to a government for the support or of securing its protection unless he first makes an explicit and purely voluntary contract for that purpose. It is perfectly evident, therefore, that neither voting nor paying taxes proves that anybody's consent or obligation to the Constitution. Consequently, we have no evidence at all that the Constitution is binding upon anybody or that anybody is under any contract or obligation whatsoever to support it. Okay. Again, he continues to make the same point over and over with several examples. So we've already learned that the government is illegitimate because it is said to be based on consent. Already gone over how nobody has actually consented, and so making these examples of, well, if you vote, then you're consenting. No, we've cleared that up. Well, you pay taxes, so that means you consent. No. Being basically held at gunpoint and robbed does not mean that you consent to the entity that is government. Now, people believe what they've been programmed to believe, that government provides services and that they work for us, and paying taxes is part of living in a civilized society. I cannot roll my eyes hard enough when I hear that. And these are all things that you just parrot because this is what you're told and this is what the media tells you, and you don't ever stop to think about what you're actually saying and what these things mean, because first of all, you can try to describe how this is a civilized society when your government robs you and extorts you and murders people, and but again, I said this the other day, you can't explain how America is the land of the free and give me any example other than comparing it to some other country that is some slightly less free in one way or another. So that's all for today. I'll make it quick. My dogs are in here acting a fool already. So quick one today, less than 10 minutes. Woohoo! And we'll see. We're getting through this book pretty quick, actually. So again, we'll get into probably Lark and Rose's book after this, which will take you the next step in understanding the myth of authority and why people believe that the government does these good things and that it's legitimate and stuff like that. So hopefully by next week we'll start another book and I'll go off on some more tangents and good times. Okay. As always, do not comply. Bye.